What's up, Kyuzou here, and welcome to the most broken build of all time. How broken is it? I had so much fun, I leveled to 100, and then I leveled to a 99 again. No Ashes of the Star nerf, no Aegis nerf, no Melding of the Flesh nerf, in fact, no nerfs at all. So, of course, this is going to be my League starter in Sentinel. Now, I've spent a good 8 hours recording, editing this video, but the end result was like an hour. And that's, a minimum of 30 minutes more than I wanted this to be. So this will be the second edition. We're doing it all over again. That's, hopefully shorter. Maybe if I talk faster. So I had an intro and everything, showing off Simulacrum Wave 30, face tanking Kurgle at depth 570, etc. But I just had so much shit in there that, I don't know, maybe I'll leave some of the stuff in, remove some of the stuff once I edit this again. I don't know. Anyways, let's go again. So this is a great mapper, great bosser, great delver. This build is the whole Pacarino. Now the best part is, we can start off budget and then slowly upgrade our gear pieces one by one. Like we can, get some garbage gear on, and then, we'll perfect the helmet. Once that's done, we'll perfect the gloves. Once that's done, we'll move on to the belt, maybe the ring. We'll just pick and choose, Now, short disclaimer, I'm not the author of this build. Tenkie is. Although I'm pretty sure he wasn't the only one who thought of it, but it was his video that I found, and it was his POV I was using. Now this is not a 100% copy paste, but like, I don't know, 97%. As usual, timestamps will be in the description as always, as POVs and other stuff that you should definitely check out. So defensively, we are using a Aegis Aurora to recover the energy shield on block. So because of that, we want as much block as possible. We also use Melding of the Flesh so that we can get our max resist to 90. And 50% of all the other builds, we are using Ashes of the Star, mainly for the Aura Reservation. As you can see, we are also allocating Charisma. And we also want to cap our Chaos Resist, because this is basically the only thing that can kill us. Now, sadly, I am 1% away from capping, because my luck with Divines is god-awful. So whether or not I do have an intro or not, so what I didn't showcase in there was a map showcase. So let's get that over with. So we'll throw in a random Beyond map here and we'll do a double Beyond. Sure, we'll throw some beasts on there, whatever. Did I lose that thing now? So while we're at it, map mods we should avoid are only 3 basically. Extra damage as elemental is actually not bad for us because we have 90 all res. What we really don't want to run is reduced effect of non-curse auras, because this is going to weaken our purities, therefore our resists, which is going to make it harder for us to run Righteous Fire. We, for obvious reason, can't run no regen. You don't want to run, 60% reduced recovery rate. It is manageable, actually. On hardcore, don't do it. On softcore, it's reduced chance to block is sort of manageable as well, but I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, that's the 4. So let's jump into this random map here that we obviously didn't spend like 100 chaos trying to get just a Beyond mod. So on this Deuterino, we are using a Sinvicta on our weapon swap so that we can get Rampage. That is sadly the only slot I can put Rampage. You can get Rampage on gloves, but I can't glove swap because this is where I have my auras. I also can't belt swap because we have, I forget the name of the belt, but there's a Rampage belt, because I need the Dext. So you want to be really quick when you weapon swap. So, tap, tap. And we got Rampage. And we got some Harbinger there with just... We got slow motion too. We also have Vol RF for single target. Pop that, boom, you dead. This is the worst possible map to showcase, but we are running Vol Cyclone so that we can be lazy, like, and just, you know, let them come to us instead of coming to them, and we've shown enough. I have one more thing. We're gonna throw in a random invitation, I guess. Where's the tab? It doesn't have anything bad, right? Yeah. So let's see if we can like actually kinda just AFK this. I'm hoping we can. If not, then I'm just gonna edit this part out. So we'll start that. Pop right this fire. Just sit in the middle, I guess. Oh, grab a little drink. So yeah, this seems like a kind of decent build, you know. Not broken at all. No nerfs needed, you know. Could just go to the bathroom if I wanted. Could you like not be out of range? Thank you. Maybe we should like... Did everything come out already? You know, we could just do a Vol Cyclone, and they are apparently immune to Vol Cyclone. That's interesting, I didn't know that. Yeah, fuck it, we'll just kill these. So damage is acceptable, I want to say. It's damn impressive for being, like, our single target is Fire Trap, and for being Fire Trap, non-crit, it is pretty damn impressive. I wanted to make the video shorter, and by doing this, I most likely just made it a lot longer, but... Alright, so let's start with a gem setup. So the main one is Righteous Fire, Life Tap, Awaken Swift Affliction, Awaken Elemental Focus. You don't really need the Awaken gems, that's to start out, but... So, Swift Affliction doesn't actually work with Righteous Fire unless we Life Tap, because Life Tap adds a hidden duration tag to Righteous Fire. Our single target is Fire Trap with Empower, Life Tap, Burning Damage, Trap and Mine, and Combustion. So if we don't have access to an Empower early on, we could do Control Destruction, or Conc Effect, honestly, because Fire Trap is literally only our single target. So, you know, Conc Effect or Controlled. I would probably use Conc Effect because Controlled has the negative crit thing. As for the gloves, it's where we have our auras. We have Enlighten with Malevolence, Purity of Elements, and Determination. And our other auras are Purity of Ice, Defiance, Banner, and then we have Molten Shell, just self-cast. I don't like having Molten Shell on Cast and Never Taken. I tried it, but it is insanely unreliable. Cast and Damage is actually bugged. I don't believe they fixed it yet, but it's bugged with Cast and Never Taken. You need to have it on a super low level, otherwise it won't proc, and having it on a super low level, it doesn't really, you know, give us that much armor. And in our shield, we have faster attack, shield charge, and life tap. In our weapon, we have Enduring Cry, Flame Dash with life tap. So we're pretty much life tapping everything. And then, of course, the Vol Cyclone for the Lils. So this would be the section to talk about that. So Enlighten. Now, I have Enlighten level 4 and a head enchant for Mana Reservation. So you would want... you need the enchant before you can get Enlighten level 4. Because with an Enlighten level 4, you know, I still have 32 mana, and the only thing I need mana for is my Molten Shell, which is costing me currently 13 mana. So with a Enlighten level 3, we are down to 3 mana, which means we would have to life tap Molten Shell. But with a head enchant and level 3, we jump up to like 37. Now I do have some mana on gear, so the values is going to differ. But yeah, the enchant you're looking for is either Malevolence or Purity of Elements. It won't work with the Determination because we already get that from the tree, and then there's like diminishing returns or whatever. You can't reduce the mana cost of Determination more than a certain level, I guess. And Purity of Ice won't work because it's only a 35% mana reservation. Alright, so let's jump over to the gear, and we'll start with the mandatory pieces, I guess. So, number 1 is an Aegis Aurora. This is going to bump us to 90 all res, and of course this is the one thing that makes us more or less immortal. We will need an Ashes of the Star. The +1 and quality to all skill gems is just damage, so that's not like needed. What we're looking for is the Reservation of efficiency skill, so you want a max roll as possible on that one. The rest can be whatever. And we are also allocating charisma, like we need a shit tonnery of reservation efficiency here. Third is Melding of the Flesh. This is going to, well, this is what's really pushing us to 90 all res. Not mandatory, but definitely highly recommended is the Legacy of Fury boots. These drops of Baven, excuse moi. So what this does is it gives us Scorched, which lowers enemies' resists. It also, thank God, has 30% movement speed, because usually uniques have like negative movement speed. We also get explosion effect on kill, and on top of that, it sort of pro-lifts the explosion into an ignite that does some pretty impressive damage. What we want for enchant is regen life per second if you were hit recently. And I think that covers the requirements. So we're going to move over to the rest of the gear here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I crafted them. Now for each piece, maybe not the rings, I have a separate detailed video on how I crafted them. So we'll start with the Sceptre. And oh my god, I just turned into Cute Dog. So first things first, this is an explosion scepter. You don't need this. I just had the most amazing deal. I had to buy it, therefore I bought it. It's in the too rich for your own good kind of category. We already get explosion from the boots, so it's kind of redundant. So like mentioned, I do have a video showcasing how I crafted this exact scepter from scratch. So be sure to check that out down below. So what we're looking for on a scepter is +1 to fire, damage of a time multiplier, burn damage, fire damage. So to craft like your starter scepter, you want quality gems that are fire tagged. I think I still have, here we go. So it needs to have the tag fire in the gem. And you vendor these totaling to 40%. So you grab like 11% here, and you have 10% there, and we'll have, yeah, so these all, well, these goes above 40, which is good. We vendor this alongside a white scepter, and what we get is a blue scepter back with +1 to level of all fire spell skill gems. And what we ideally want to augment here is either damage over time multiplier or increase burning damage, because these two are the only mods we cannot mastercraft. Now, I think I don't remember. Yeah, I augmented fire damage over time multiplier, which is kinda bad because I think it's tier 1. That's not bad, but I mean, the mastercraft we can do is 35%. So we would rather multi-mod fire damage over time multiplier. But yeah, your ideal scepter would look something like this. And again, I think I accidentally skimmed it over, but when starting out, like when you're making your first scepter, just regal whatever, aug whatever, regal whatever. As long as you don't regal a suffix, well, a bad suffix that is, because we need 2 suffixes open for the multi-mod. And you just multi-mod, like fire damage and fire damage of a time multiplier. So once you have that as a starter, you collect fire gems, and yeah, you just save up for like a full tab, and then you begin your crafting session. I'm going to show a little tip on how to actually search for the fire gems, because it can be a little tricky, because obviously we do fire and then badunk, and it's going to highlight the fire gems, but this is only highlighting if the fire tag is in the beginning. If it's at the end, we have to do quote fire and then boop, bing, bong. Alright, the helmet. Potentially your most expensive craft, depending how lucky or unlucky you are with Essence of Horror. Down below I do have a link to a video showing how I crafted this exact helmet. Basically we're Essence Horror spamming until we hit burning damage. We then lock the suffixes, we veil Chaos Orb until we hit +2 AoE gems, and then we mastercraft life. Done. So in my opinion, Conc effect isn't really something you want or need for mapping. Now, if we are intending to make this a bosser, then obviously we do want Conc effect, and if we want to push the tooltip as high as we can, then of course we want Conc effect. But I would pick burn damage over Conc effect for mapping, because obviously Conc effect is going to decrease our AoE. And the second reason I am recommending burn over Conc is that the socketed gems deal 30% more elemental damage is a suffix, and the burn damage is a suffix. So once we finish the suffixes, we can much easier get Conc than the other way around. So it's a lot easier to finish the helm chasing the Conc than it is chasing the burn damage. Now the head enchant we already went through. We want Malevolence or Purity of Element, and if you have Enlighten level 4, you don't need the enchant anymore, and you could go for a Righteous Fire damage. Chest piece, most likely second or the most expensive piece for crafting. Once again, I do have a separate video down below explaining how I crafted it. We want to use either a Saintly Chainmail or a Saint's Hauberk as a base. We are going to use Eldritch Currency to craft it. This is a really good slot to aim for Chaos Resistance, by the way. Either we use Essence of Greed, or we get a Temple modded base, and the Temple mod is the flat life alongside the percent life. That is one and the same stat. Getting the Temple modded base is going to be expensive, because if you want tier 1 Chaos Res, you want a minimum of item level 81. And if you want tier 1 on your other resist, you need an 84. And 81 is only going to allow you for tier 2 resist on the Fire, Cold, and Lightning. But considering how we're crafting it, or need to craft it, it could get expensive in the long term if we're unlucky by using a Temple modded base. So I would suggest starting out just Essence of Greed spamming. Once again, I do have a video down below going more into detail and slower on how I crafted this chest piece. So the implicits are going to be very expensive, as we need to use Orb of Conflict on the spell block all the way to tier 1, which is 10%. This alone cost me roughly 60 exalts just on the Orb of Conflicts. The second implicit we need is +1 to max cold or +1 to max all, and we can do this with just lesser Ichors. So to cap our spell block, we will need either a 5% corruption on our shield alongside the 10% on the chest piece, or we fix it with clusters. Now the cheaper option here is obviously to fix it with cluster, like a small cluster. Because even if I had a 5% on here, I would still only have 74%, but we're 1% off. But as I showed you earlier in the invitation, my spell block is currently, I think, 72%, which seems to be good enough. So I just realized I'm probably not covering this anywhere in the script, so let's go back to the shield quickly. So if you're planning on chasing a double corruption on the Aegis Aurora, the top contenders are obviously chance to block spell damage, along with physical damage taken as any elemental or chaos damage. Like an insanely good Aegis Aurora would be a double physical damage taken as elemental. Now we do have a huge chunk of armor to work with, but this game works pretty weirdly when it comes to armor. Like, the harder they hit, the less your armor matters. So against, bosses that deals physical damage, like huge chunks of physical damage, we want to sort of convert that damage into elemental instead, since we're maxing our max resistances to 90. Right, let's move on to the gloves. And once again, video down below on how I crafted these exact gloves. So there's 2 ways to go on about crafting the gloves. And I do regret not choosing the first one that I'm going to be talking about, which is Eldritch Currency. Now, the base we want to use is Apothecary Gloves, because they are the best armor energy shield hybrid. On the first method, we will be using Eldritch Currency. First, we need to figure out what we need on the gloves. Me personally, I needed dexterity and a resist that I could then change to fire, and that's basically all I needed. I also needed an open prefix for the socketed AoE gems. A personal recommendation here on the gloves: if I could recraft all my gear all over again, I would recommend getting dexterity and chaos rest on your gloves, because it's a lot easier. It's going to make the rest of the gear to craft a lot easier. So we either spam, Essence of Envy for Chaos Res or Essence of Sorrow for Dexterity until, you hit the combo. As for the Implicits, we could go for +1 cold if we can't find a way to bump our Purity of Ice to level 23. We cannot use Empower on the Purity of Ice, because that is going to add a multiplier to the reservation. So we would have to corrupt gloves, which we lose the Eldritch Implicit. Or we corrupt boots, what I did. So Ashes gives +1 to all skill gems, which Pure Device is. And then I got +2 to socketed duration gems. Pure Device is not a duration gem, but once you turn it Vol Pure Device, it becomes a duration gem. And my level 20 Pure Device is now 23, and level 23 is where we get the next +1 to max cold res. So if we have a 21 purity, we would only need a +1 to all gems corruption somewhere. I was actually trying to get that on the shield early on, but I bricked 15 Aegis shields this league. All bricked. And, this is probably the most insane Righteous Fire corruption ever. Not only did I hit the +2, I hit flat life regen too. But yeah, back to the Implicit. Ideally, we want fire exposure alongside fire damage over time multiplier. Method number 2, which is what I went for. The second method is to use Hunter Influence Gloves, as this keeps us the Implicit of the Apothecary Gloves, and we get the fire damage multiplier on top of it. Now, Tier 1 Hunter Fire multiplier is actually the exact same as Tier 1 Searing Exarch multiplier. The Eldritch Implicit that we get for fire damage over time multiplier, if you use Orb of Conflict all the way to Tier 1, it is the exact same values as a Tier 1 Hunter fire damage over time multiplier. So once again, honestly, I kind of regret not Eldritch crafting the gloves, because it would have saved me so much time. You have no idea how long I crafted these gloves. You also have no idea how quickly I crafted them in the end, but yeah. That's another story. The story is down below, by the way. Belt! Again, video down in the description. So by running Dedication to the Goddess version of Ubelab, we get access to belt enchants. And, oh god, I've run 30 and I couldn't get it, but whatever. And the only enchant we really want here is the 30% reduced effect of curses on you while on consecrated ground. And we are always on consecrated ground. And because of Pious Pass Ascendancy, the 30% would push us to 105% reduced effect of curses, which makes us curse immune. So for the belt, we kind of do want a Stygian belt, Hunter or not, so that we can use an Abyss Duel, and in the Abyss Duel we ideally want to regenerate life per second while moving, and then, if you're lucky, you could get life or slap in a resist that you need. In my case, I needed a Chaos Res. So when it comes to Hunter belts, typically you want to fossil craft them. but I needed an excessive amount of dexterity, and the belt was the only open slot for me. So I used Essence of Sorrow on a non-influenced Stygian until I hit the desirable suffixes. My desirable suffix was Tier 1 Chaos Res. I didn't hit that, but I hit Tier 1 Fire and Lightning, so there's no way I'm just going to leave the belt, right? Rings. So we want at least one ring with flammability. We can find these in Delve from Fire Nodes or from Warlord influenced rings. On Warlord rings, we can use Harvest and spam Reforged Caster to try and hit flammability, as Caster is the only tag flammability has. Our second ring, we could Essence of Delirium spam, which adds damage of a time multiplier to rings. And on this one, we got insanely lucky because we hit Tier 1% fire damage as well. So what I did was I bought a Amethyst ring with Fractured Life. It needed to be an Amethyst ring because I needed the Chaos Res. I then used Essence of Delirium. And like I said, I hit Tier 1 fire with an open suffix. I then locked the suffixes and used a Veiled Chaos Orb and unveiled minimum frenzy charges. I then mastercrafted percent damage. I have tried getting energy shield as my last prefix, but I kept failing and eventually I gave up. The mana's not the end of the world, but yeah, energy shield would have been better. So why is Frenzy good for this build? Well, Frenzy gives us 4% more global damage per Frenzy charge. And by default, our max Frenzy charges are 3. So that is 12% more free damage while mapping. I could show you some more example of flammability rings. So this is the first one I had. I bought it with Chaos Res and flammability clean. I then multi-modded it and slammed energy shield. And then at the point where I did not need the Chaos Res, I tried working on this. I used Essence of Delirium, but I kept missing. I didn't get anything to work with. Had some Essence of Anger, used that, and hit, well, basically this. The life I did lock suffix and reforge life until I hit tier 2, I think I have here, which is good enough, I guess. It keeps flipping it. It's tier 2 life, yeah. Alright, let's move on to flasks. So we want Flagellant on all of our flasks. Flagellant is gain 7 charges when you are hit by an enemy. Flagellant is tier 1. We don't need tier 1, like 5 is good enough, honestly, to aim for. But, you know, the more the better. So we want that on every single flask of ours. We then want used when charges reach full, installation orb enchant. So especially when bossing, our flasks are always going to fill up to full because we're going to keep getting hit and we're going to keep blocking everything, and the flasks are like 100% always going to be active. So that is broken as shit. So the 3 flasks I recommend as a core is Quartz, Quicksilver, and Granite. We ideally want attack speed on one of them for the shield charge, and we want increased armor for, well, more armor. Then, of course, we have the movement speed on the Quicksilver. The other 2 slots here kind of depend on our gear. And it kind of depends on what we're doing as well. So we will start, I guess, over here. So if you're not chaos capped, I would suggest dropping Basalt. I am capped on chaos with the setup, so I can use my Basalt. But if I wasn't capped on chaos, I would swap in an Amethyst flask. Because it is really important that we cap our Chaos Res, because, again, chaos damage is more or less the only thing that can kill us. On the other spectrum, I use a Sulfur Flask while bossing. So, I mean, a Sulfur gives us Consecrated Ground, but we already have Consecrated Ground. But what Sulfur does as well is it adds increased damage when we use it. So right now my tooltip is 995, hit the Sulfur, up to 1,000,003. While mapping, however, since we're doing, well, I am doing Searing Exarch influence on every map, I run a Ruby Flask, because what Searing Exarch altars like to do is to give me negative fire res. To, which a point I can't run Righteous Fire anymore, which means I can't do the map. So I would recommend actually using a Ruby Flask like no one has done since, well, what, Bloodlines League or something? We also want on one of the flasks to have regenerate 3% of life per second during flask effect. We unlock this by unveiling a Cinder Swallow flask that is dropped by the Mastermind. Our last, well, it kind of depends. Like, I have no ways of getting a Corrupting Blood immunity. Like, the only really jewel socket I have is Melding of the Flesh, and I haven't spammed for immunity there. And on the tree, I can only get it from here, but I need the extra chaos res, so I'm running a flask. And since the flasks are 100% up all the time, I have the immunity that way, so it doesn't really matter. Passive tree and Ascendacy, so the first thing we grab is Sanctuary, and then we grab Pious Path. Pious Path alone is going to allow us to run Righteous Fire. It also increases the effect of the Consecrated Ground, and Consecrated Ground already gives us reduced effect of curses. So this will put us at 75% less effect of curses on us. We then grab Augury of Penitence, and our last one will be Righteous Providence, which gives us crit per strength or int, whichever is lowest. Righteous Fire famously does not crit, but our single target is Fire Trap, and Fire Trap can in fact crit. The int and strength isn't bad. We do get, actually, do you get 1 life per 5 strength, or what is it? I forget. We get flat 1 per 2, so that's 25. That's 25 flat life, so that's still pretty good. But yeah, it's literally the only thing we can grab. Because the only other thing would be Instrument of Virtue, which is more attack damage for each non-instant spell you cast, and that's useless. Alright, so let's have a look at the rest of the passive tree. So we are Anointing Charisma for mana reservation. We are grabbing Unwavering for stun immunity. We are grabbing this for maximum all res. And we are going through the Cold Pass because of Purity of Ice and Aegis Aurora. Over here, we grab Determination Reservation. And this is technically the only dual slot we pick up, so this is where we put Melding of Flesh. We grab our Regen over here. We grab Divine Shield because it's 1 point and right there. We grab Glancing Blows so that we can cap our block. We grab Divine Judgment for deeps, and we also grab, while starting out, you could grab the 15 all resistance, because that's going to help a lot. But we grab increased effect of non-damaging ailments, and, Fire Trap and Righteous Fire famously is not a non-damaging ailment. However, Scorch, that we get from the boots, is a damaging ailment, so that is going to increase the effect of it, lowering the enemy's resistance even more. We also grab the entire Sovereignty Wheel, and of course the increased mana reservation efficiency. Up here we grab the Flat Life. Here we have Holy Fire with the fire damage of a type multiplier. Here's the spell block. And over here we grab Regen life per second while moving, and then we come up to Breath of Flames. And then we have clusters. Now the clusters is not really something you're gonna grab until you're like 96. So it's a long way to get the clusters. I mean, a minimum you're gonna be level 90 before you even start thinking about clusters. To get the whole thing, I think you need to beat 97? 94 minimum. 94 is where you can do the whole thing, I guess. Ideal, you want to be somewhere around 95, 96 before you even start thinking about clusters. So if you're one of those that don't really push beyond 90, first of all, this build is probably not for you because it doesn't really shine until we are 90 plus. So, pre-cluster, we are actually picking up Champion of the Cause. Bring up that note, that note, that note, that note, and auras from your skills have increased effect on you. So the aura effectiveness is actually going to bump up your cold resistance and potentially even the max cold. So you wanna make sure you have your resistances in order once we move out of this. We can't, in fact, even move out of this wheel until we have Ashes of the Star anointed with Charisma. We need an Enlighten at least level 3 along with head enchant. If we don't have the head enchant, we need a level 4 Enlighten. So we need all of that before we can even move out of this. So if you can move out of it, but you don't have clusters, what you could do is just fill out with life. You could fill out Heart of Flame. You could probably even get Acrimony, maybe even Explosive Impact. Just fill that out until you have your clusters, and then spec out of these nodes again. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about the clusters then. So once we're like mid-90, that's when we can really start using the clusters. So the important one here is Prismatic Heart. That's the one you really want to help with the resistances, and of course we get the damage. And then, it's whatever. You can go for Widespread Destruction or Burning Bright. Please note that I don't know the breakpoint, but there is an AoE breakpoint. You need a certain amount of AoE before you actually get AoE. Burning Bright for the AoE might not actually give the desired effect, but we do get the burn damage, so that's damage. As for mediums, I suggest Brush with Death and anything. You could go Brush with Death, Burning Bright. Now I have Master of Fire here, and Master of Fire is insanely rare to get. It is insanely expensive to buy, and it is you could go 3,000 alterations before you even see it. So once I had mine, I actually beast imprinted it because I had to, because I couldn't, regal something bad and then annul, or whatever. So I don't really recommend Master of Fire, and we don't need Master of Fire really. If you get Eldritch gloves with the fire exposure there. Now the fire exposure on the gloves do require the mobs to be hit, but the on-kill effect from Legacy of Fury is actually going to apply that anyway. So if you kill a mob, it is then going to explode onto the other mobs, giving the fire exposure there. Here's also where I decided to push my chaos resistance. Clusters is a really good spot as well to get dexterity, A resist, chaos res. The Watcher we're using is prior number 1 is damage over time multiplier while affected by malevolence. That is the number 1 priority. Second, you want a physical damage from hits taken as any elemental damage while affected by pure development. As a third, a double physical taken as elemental would be nice. You have determination with flat armor. You have a lot of options for a triple, but let's just focus on a double, I guess. And for a small, I went for damage over time, increased max life, and life regen. We could put another Student of Decay over here if we want to push our cast rest this way. Personally, I'm probably going to put a spell block node here, so I won't have to spend that kind of money again on my chest piece to get the spell block capped. So that is more or less the tree. I think are we done? Why am I lagging this much? Pantheon, Soul of Arakali, and Soul of Tukohama. End of story. As for leveling, I'm not really going to say a whole lot. Pox has a pretty detailed leveling guide on his passive building, and I am going to link his passive building down below and in my POB. So you will get my POB, you will get Pox's, and you will get Tenkia's in the description. What I will say though is to follow Pox's leveling guide, and you will play Pox's full Righteous Fire build until you are in the mid-80s and you have the Aegis and you have the Ashes, you have the Enlighten, you have the Melding of Flesh before you make the swap to this setup. So if we're league starting, which I mean we're gonna league start, of course. You want to rush Etched by Acid up to Eater Worlds, because Eater Worlds is the boss that drops Ashes of the Star and Melding of Flesh. Secondly, we want to focus on Betrayal. So you want to pick up Betrayal nodes. That doesn't seem to... Oh, where did I do wrong? I'm going to start over. We want to pick up Betrayal nodes and run Betrayal so that we can get items to unveil, and we want to unveil the things that we want to craft later, like Energy Shield as extra life. Life as extra Energy Shield, that order. Percent life, percent mana on chest, Frenzy on ring, plus AoE gems on head and gloves. So you really want to farm Betrayal, sadly. And I'm looking at... Like, I shortened this down like a mother. And we're still at 1 hour of recording. I don't think I can... I think I'm editing maybe 10 minutes away from... fuck. I guess it's a 1 hour video, guys. That's it for me. Thank you and good night. See you in Sentinel.